I'm Sarah Wilson, and you're listening to the Roots and All podcast. Hello, and welcome to this week's podcast. In this episode, I'm speaking to James Mellors. James works as a gardener at a private estate in East Sussex, employing organic growing methods. James has a really fascinating background in anthropology, forest gardening and horticulture that's taken him around the world via the Amazon, Nepal, Scotland and Switzerland. If you'd like to find out more about James, you can find a longer bio in the show notes. In this episode, we talk about vegetable gardening, including organic and no-kill methods of pest control, companion planting and unusual veg varieties, and we also touch on beekeeping. You may notice we refer to next year's growing season because we actually recorded this last year, but what we talk about is perfectly appropriate to this time of the year in your veg garden. I hope you enjoy it. I am almost bored by this question, to be honest with you, but how do people cope with slugs and snails if they want to garden organically?
Yeah, they can be a pain. Organically, there are quite a few methods. Part of the methods are to try and introduce wildlife into the garden. Although there's a big decrease in hedgehogs in the UK, which is sad. Hedgehogs are fantastic at night to get rid of so-called pests like slugs. Birds are also good if you're trying to attract birds into the garden. There has been an RHS study done in the last few weeks on organic methods for slug control, including eggshells, copper strips, wool pellets, and they said that there's no data to prove that they work. However, I think working in a garden, you can actually see a result in using those. We use a combination of eggshells, which are good just to sprinkle around prone plants. You can't do the whole garden with it. Any kind of metal is sometimes good, like copper strips around the bottom of plant pots. You don't need to put them around the plants. You can just put them around the plant pots. They won't go up. They won't like the metal. It'll just deter them completely. Wool pellets we've not really used at all. We do have them, but we haven't really used them, but I've heard that they are successful. Nematodes are one of the organic methods, although they don't leave the slug in very, very nice shape. Mm-hmm. What else? You can use organic slug pellets, which we don't use, which is an iron-based slug pellet. Again, they don't like metal, so ferrous phosphate, which you sprinkle on, they'll kill the slug, and any other wildlife that will eat those slugs then won't be harmed. I know a lot of agricultural places use those. What we actually use, which is what I use in our garden, which is not using any kind of chemical or any kind of eggshells. If you turn a ceramic plate upside down in the corner of a garden at night, the slugs will go under it for protection from the weather, and then in the morning you can just go along, and it's a long process, but eventually you'll get most of the slugs out of the garden. And then as long as you remove them I probably won't chuck them over the neighbour's fence. I'll probably move them within several hundred metres because they do work their way back. And that's a good way to get rid of them and keep them alive, and all the wildlife can eat them in as well. So that's the main one we use actually in the corner, especially on raised beds. Raised beds, the slugs find it a bit more difficult to go up the side of them, particularly if it's wood, because of the texture. And if you put the plates around the corner or 4 in the morning, you'll have quite a few slugs there to remove and relocate to a nicer place.
Yeah, I do use that method actually.
Yeah, it does work really as well. Just for protection, and then
you can sort of notice the slug populations dropping over time when you use that method, and you find that you get less of them under the plate, and also they're smaller, so you're kind of breaking almost that breeding cycle too. And it's a really good way.
And part of the breeding cycle is if you would dig a bed over, although we use no dig. If you have air pockets, it's more likely to be slug eggs in there. So if you can try and make sure that there's no air pockets, a bit more compressed, then you should reduce the slugs in there anyway.
Okay. So when I was asking you what you're into and what methods you're practicing, you mentioned companion planting, and that's something that I'm absolutely fascinated by. But can you explain what it is?
Yeah, companion planting. It's utilising one or more plants to in a relationship, a symbiotic relationship with the other plants. So basically it's benefiting both plants by using their chemical characteristics or even physical characteristics. Some plants like each other more than others. Some plants don't like each other at all. Mm-hmm. It's for pest control. It's for nutrient intake. And it's even for shading plants as well. If you have a larger plant over a smaller one, like a salad, then it won't burn the leaves. So it's just basically complementing each plant accordingly, I suppose, and having more of it also helps to have less of a monocrop. You have multiple crops in a bed which can benefit each other, even on a rotational system.
Yeah. When you mix it up, it does.
Yeah, it does help. Yeah, and you get different insects in there. You'll deter different insects. They'll help each other. They'll repel each other.
Yeah,
it's just a way. Yeah.
And what are your in your experience? What are the ones that work best?
I think the one when I was told as a child by my grandfather was chives and carrots. Carrot fly can be a pain, and if you plant chives, which I assume is because of the allium aspect to it, around a bed of carrots, then the smell of the chives will keep the carrot fly away. So that's the typical one that I always remember and always use. Also with carrot fly, if you have the ground above if you plant them above 2 foot off the floor, then you won't get carrot fly anyway. What else do we use? Orac, red orac in particular. That's usually an outside plant. It attracts aphids. So if there are aphids in the area, they'll more likely go to the orac than they would do the actual plant that you want to cultivate or harvest. And then when the orac is full of aphids, you can just remove the orac, put it on the compost pile or elsewhere, and then replant. And it's more of a attractant to aphids, so it keeps away from your other plants as well.
That's a really good one.
In the greenhouse, I wouldn't use that in the greenhouse though, because you can attract loads of aphids into the greenhouse down like that. One that we do use in the greenhouse is marigolds, which are a good pollinator. They attract hoverflies and bees, which help pollinate your inside plants, but also the smell repels aphids. So that gives you a bit more protection against aphids and just get some pollinators in there.
So we're talking tagetes there.
Yeah, tagetes. A calendula is a bit of a different one. They have, I think they have a sticky residue on their upper stem, so that can attract certain insects, particularly aphids, and they stick to them then. So we use that for extreme cases, inside and outside, and then the nectar will attract the aphids and other insects that you might not want, and then it will stick to the actual stem or the upper stem, and then you can just remove it or leave it accordingly. What else have we got? Cucumber. People say this is an old Native American one, I think. Cucumber and nasturtium, I think it is. In fact, backtrack on that. It's corn and beans, which is the Native American, which corn is a wind-pollinated variety, a wind-pollinated plant. It's also pretty rigid. So to remove the monocrop, if you plant a climbing bean near it, the bean will climb up the stem of the corn, and it'll still pollinate. And then you've got a natural support then. And by the time the corn's out of the ground, the beans will be harvested as well. Mm-hmm. So you don't need to use canes or any kind of implements like that. Cucumber and nasturtium I just mentioned, but that's an inside one. People think that nasturtium is a really strong peppery smelling plant and it can repel some insects. So a lot of people will plant nasturtium next to cucumber. The nasturtium will climb up, protect the cucumber, and the shade will help as well. Although I've always found that our nasturtiums, wherever I am, they'll accumulate black fly on the top of the nasturtium. It doesn't go onto the cucumbers, but I'd always be wary of that one just in case they do start attracting black fly into a greenhouse. Then it's always covered in it.
Can't they? Yeah.
People sometimes ask about asparagus beetle. In fact, and what we do, you plant a tomato, particularly an outside tomato within asparagus. The scent of the tomato is pretty strong, and if you side shoot the tomato as well, then and leave the leaves on the ground, it will repel asparagus because they don't like the smell at all. It's very strong, and it will keep the asparagus beetle down if you do have it. I think they're the main ones actually that we use. Yeah,
Okay.
There's going to be several others, but the main ones we use. So.
Well, that's really good to know what ones work for you.
Yeah.
What I'm kind of interested in finding out on this podcast is about whether there's scientific evidence to back things up. Now, I don't believe we always need that, but have you ever come across any studies that have actually measured the effects of this, or is it just that people are basing it on their experience in their own gardens?
I've never really seen much research done on it or conducted on the actual companion planting. But I think working in several gardens throughout different parts of the UK and other places, and to change a garden from a not using companion planting to using companion planting, although you've got different weather patterns and different nutrient patterns, we found a difference in our cropping and how healthy the plants are, which is the main emphasis of companion planting. Mm-hmm. If you have a happier plant and a disease-free plant, it'll be better for the environment and also for cropping. But I'm not seeing many studies on that, but everywhere I've worked or worked with and other people are definitely a strong believer in companion planting. A lot of the books and texts on it also promote it. I'm not sure if there's any hard scientific research done on it.
No,
but empirically, I think
find out.
I think working within that empirically, then it's gonna work and it's gonna help.
Yeah. You do have to base things on your own experiences sometimes. And
other people's experiences.
Exactly.
As well.
Very good gardeners who
like
do it.
I think talking earlier, you don't know everything.
No.
You shouldn't know everything, because that's part of a gardening aspect. Is you're always learning.
Yeah.
And always finding new things.
Brilliant. Okay, so you did touch upon sort of shading and pests and diseases. Beyond that, is there any evidence in your opinion that it actually helps plants put on, say, extra growth?
I think that within companion planting, like if you create a healthier plant with less stress and less disease, it's going to have better growth anyway. And that's going to be scientifically proven anyway, companion planting or not. So by reducing the pests and the stress that the plant will be under, by giving it as much support as you naturally can, then it's going to benefit the plant in any growing condition then.
So better crops.
Yeah, it's going to be better crops, but also a healthier plant, and then it will help the ground in the future with the rotation as well. You're not introducing disease pests and you're not stressing the plant out.
And it means actually probably a lot less work for you trying to keep on top of pests and diseases.
Yeah, it's trying to make it as easy as possible as well.
And probably reduce, watering and things like that if it's or anything that's artificially propping it up. If it's already healthy and flourishing, you need to intervene less. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, and it's letting the plants do the work, do what they can do then, and then just leaving them to it. There's little interference as possible.
Exactly. Now I'm interested because that, as well as things that do work well together, there are lots of texts on things that don't work well together. So have you ever, just for the sheer hell of it, tried to grow the things that don't supposedly work together? And have you seen that they don't?
I think I touched on it earlier. Nasturtium and cucumber is definitely a combination that people use, but I always find that it introduces black fly. And when you introduce the black fly, it's pretty difficult to get rid of. So I think I think the nasturtium will deter certain pests with its scent and aroma, but it will introduce black fly as well. So I don't think that is not one I use now. And the other one is shallots. Shallots don't seem to like anything. There's one and a lot of the studies or a lot of the texts will say that shallots are a fickle plant within trying to grow other things. I've always found it can be pretty difficult to grow things near shallots.
Right.
But I'm yet to determine why.
They're just generally antisocial.
They're usually a little lonely plant in the corner of the garden.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, but onions are fine. Onions and chives, which are the similar family, and it's just shallots. Yeah.
How strange.
Yeah, maybe that's one for some research.
Yeah. The loners of the plant world.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And some things are very difficult to grow, but sometimes they are worth the effort. What would you say are your most labour-intensive ones that you like to grow because you just think they're great anyway?
Labour-intensive. I think anything with netting, to keep pests off. If you do have a pigeon problem or have butterfly problem, then many brassicas are always they look great, and I think they're a fantastic crop, and I grow them every time. But yeah, it's to net them. It can be a pain. This year, I think our colettes, which are the flower sprout, the small kales on a Brussels sprout plant, are well. We always grow them. I think they're a fantastic veg. Brussels sprouts are also good, but again, you've got to try and net them, and then in the wind, you've got to stake them. So that's labour intensive. But I'd go for those two. I like a parsnip, although they can be a fickle seed. So it's always good to have fresh seed as much as possible. And even if you can, it's a biennial. It's a 2-year crop, so you can always save your own seed and then grow it directly from there, which it might be easier. Mm-hmm. And this year was a good year for aubergines. I think it was the dry weather inside. So yeah, and I do like a nice purple colouring.
Yeah.
Even if the texture can be a bit spongy at times.
Yeah, they are lovely plants. Yeah. So I came to see your garden, I think it was last year. The years just blur into one, to be honest. And you had something that I haven't seen before, which I think you said was strawberry spinach.
Oh, strawberry spinach, yeah.
And I'd never come across that before. So what are you growing next year that is unusual that people might not have heard of?
Yeah, what are we growing next year? Strawberry spinach was it was a spinach leaf with a small red edible berry, which was nice. It was a good crop for the ground as well, to cover some of the ground up. It spreads a lot. So that was good. This year we're going to try sweet potatoes. You need quite a bit of heat for them, and we do have raised beds, which are brick, so they do retain heat in the night and in the day. Mm-hmm. Just keeping it watered, that's going to be the issue. So sweet potatoes, which are grown from slips, which is our first trial. What we would do, to save costs as well, we'll buy sweet potato from the supermarket. We'll cut it in half, put it in a tray of water with a bag over it until you get, it's like chicken potato, you get shoots off. And then we'll carefully take the shoots off, put them in a bottle of water, wait for the shoots to develop, all the roots, and then just plant them out then. So that's one of them. I've never grown sweet potato before because I was working in the north for quite a while. It's not quite the temperature.
You're banking on another hot summer, aren't you?
Or southeast summer will do, I think. We're going to do buttonhole kale, which is a small kale. It's ornamental as well. It's a kale plant, probably 25 centimetres across. You can get red varieties and white varieties. We're going to do that down decorative side and just cook the whole. When you harvest it, you cook the whole thing. So that's a good one. Looks really nice. We're going to redo pipichi, which is Mexican coriander, which is it's fantastic with fish, and it's a great smell around the garden as well. So if people are going to grow coriander, maybe they can grow pipichi as well and see the difference. So it's a lot hardier than coriander, and I think it's more flavoursome as well, and you get some nice small purple bell-like flowers on it.
Can you save the seed from that?
You should be able to save the seed. Yeah. You should be able to save the seed on that, and we're going to save it. We saved some this year. We're going to save some next year as well. See and compare the two. The last one is another herb, which is Huaycatai, which is Peruvian marigold. It's a big plant, can grow about 4 foot tall. It attracts insects, and it's also used as a herb, again for fish. And it was typically used in Peru. And I first came across that when I was in South America for a period of time. So some of the planting that I do, I try and mimic some places I've seen or lived. So that's that one. Yeah.
Cool.
So they should be good.
Yeah. Oh, I'll definitely have to come along to the open day next year.
Yeah. I think we're having 3 next year. So,
are you? Okay.
So we'll let you know. We'll put you on the guest list.
Thank you. What I will do when I come next time is steer clear of your angry bees, because that's what I was going to come on to next, which was you keeping bees in the kitchen garden. Yeah. And you did have one hive, I think, last year that was particularly angry, but the others seemed all right. So can you just explain briefly what sort of role they play in the garden and what drew you to including them? Well,
the bees have moved.
Right.
Just because of one of the hive was aggressive, which it benefits the bees as well, because if you're going to have a lot of pests in there like wasps, or you've got the Asian hornet that's been seen in Dungeness now, sometimes an aggressive hive will protect itself even from wax moth or mice as well. So it has moved, but to move all the hive, you've got to move them over 3 miles away for several weeks, and then move them to a place where you want to go, otherwise they'll constantly go back to the original hive. So they're currently in Rye, which is local, and then we've set a new apiary up in a field, which is a bit more away from the estate for visitors, because there are horses around there as well, and bees are notorious for not liking horses. Bananas, horses, dark blue. That's the main things for bees. Dark blue, well, blue, I think it's because they see more in the UV spectrum. So a lot of flowers will have if you put them under black light, then they'll glow, which is what the bees see. And dark blue is definitely their main part of the spectrum. So if you're dark blue, they'll be attracted to you. You might get a bit annoyed that you're a person, not a flower.
Wow.
The bananas release, I think it's an enzyme, but it releases the same scent as an attack scent when bees originally protect themselves. So if you have a banana briefly before opening the hives up, then they might sense that, they might smell it, and they might start attacking, thinking that the bee's already attacked. And horses in general, no one knows why there's a dislike of bees and horses, but we do have horses on where we work, and they did use the original apiary area as a bit of a run through before they turned down the field, so that probably aggravated them some more. So we've moved into a non-horse field, and they'll be moved back, I think, next week or very early New Year. It depends. They're asleep at the moment. We've put some, we've given them some organic feed to last them over winter, and they should be nice and happy then. We opened them up the other day, and they seem very happy where they are. So it's a bit of a shame if they move it.
Oh yeah.
Bees are a vital part. Pollination in general. There's a lot of fields where we are with crops that need pollinated, and also a lot of our the veg plants around. So they're vital.
Bees are really important in James's garden, and we did talk about them more, but I thought I'd save that for another day. So a huge thanks to James for his time and his expertise. He's a really thoughtful and talented gardener, and it's lovely to get his views. I'll try and dig out some photos of the garden where James works as well and put them on my social media channels so you can see the sheer size of it. And speaking of which, don't forget that you can follow me on Twitter and Facebook, where I'm Roots and All, and Instagram, where I'm Roots and All Pod. And if you don't follow me there, you won't have seen that lovely listener Jo has volunteered to interview me for an upcoming AMA episode. So if you have a question you'd like her to ask me, please email it to podcast@rootsandall.co.uk. And don't hold back, feel free to ask me anything. I'd like to say thank you to my new Patreon subscribers, and thanks to you for listening, and I'll catch you next Tuesday.